Take over.
So first of all, hi, thank you for your patience. I'm Clarissa, I'm the founder of Startup Safary, and I currently work for a company called Paper and Tea. There's a couple of reasons why I'm here today, but the most relevant one for you is basically the fact that a couple of years ago, I was in the same position that you are in now. Okay, so I should move back a little bit. So I wanted to know a little bit before I start, so I can maybe leave some things out that were already covered by you guys, and maybe go into more detail about some topics that you're interested in. Is there something very specific you would like to, some topic you would really like to know about, or a specific question you have in your mind that you would like me to talk about? No? Are you sure? Yeah.
Well, actually, well, it's nearly in the title, but basically, like how to hire the first employee.
Okay.
I think that's the biggest. As a startup, when you don't have so much money to spend on the first employee. So.
Yeah, I know how that goes. How many people here are founders who have not started yet, who haven't founded their company? Okay, and how many have already started their company? Okay, and how many people are in HR and not in a founding position? Okay. Okay, there was another question here before we continue.
Probably the same, like how you use shares for getting employees, like how much or like how it's growing.
Okay. Okay, so to give you kind of a structure of what I plan to talk about and what I actually will talk about, my talk was it was designed for a very specific target group. So it was designed for founders who are in a very early stage, founders who are either right before their first employee or in a small kind of 5 to 10 person team and need to grow. And it was designed for founders who care about their employees and who care about implementing a fair and how would I say, responsible remuneration system. So I'm going to talk about recruitment in general, how I see it from my perspective in terms of what trends are there, how is this market changing, what platforms are emerging, etc. Then I'd like to continue with kind of, an overview of the kinds of questions you should ask yourself before. You guys have already spoken about it, but maybe I have 1 or 2 ideas that haven't been discussed yet. And after that, I want to talk about how to create a process that works specifically for your company. What I'm not going to talk about, and that's why I wanted to ask this beforehand, is average salaries. That's something maybe you know more about. I can't really talk about that so much because I only know my own perspective. What I also can't really talk about so much is equity, because in my case I solved it a different way, and also I don't want to get into a topic that I'm not an expert in. The third thing I'm not going to talk about is how to save money on your employees, because I just don't want to do that. I don't think it's right. I don't think that's the approach you need to have. I think you need to focus on different things. So in terms of the equity question, I would love to talk to you about that privately later, but I don't think it will be, it won't help you in any way if I talk about something I'm not an expert in. Okay, so long story short, if you think about the topic of recruitment, there's a couple of emerging trends and a couple of things that I noticed along the way. One of those things is that employer branding is absolutely essential. How do I know this? Because Startup Safary, the format, the brand that I co-founded, it started off as a community event and gradually evolved into a huge day of open doors for the startup industry that is focused specifically on recruiting and on employer branding. We didn't just decide one day that, oh, we're going to make this day of open doors and just have 100 companies open up their doors for about 2,000 people and then travel through the city and just check out the office because the office space is nice. We came to this idea because people were signing up for our events specifically because they're interested in, okay, what is the team like? What is the product like? Who sits in this room and talks to the people in the other room? What happens in the kitchen? Do people smile? What's the founder like? What's the vision like? All of these things were on people's minds when they signed up, either because they were looking for a job or because they were interested in the product itself. The companies, on the other hand, Either they were interested in joining for marketing reasons, which also ties into recruiting, or because they needed to present themselves in a certain way to attract talent. Because nowadays, you already said it, it's not enough just to put your listing online. You need to really think about what kind of a culture and what kind of a mission you would like to portray to the rest of the world. So this here is a screenshot of Glassdoor.com. I just took it because it really shows very well the possibilities nowadays for candidates. On this website, you can check out, you can search for jobs, you can search for companies and get reviews either from people who used to work there or from people who applied, went through the process, and from people who still work there. So people sign up, they give an anonymous review on salary, interviews, who talked to them, what the questions were, whether they like the person, whether they like the perks in the office, whether the coffee is better or not. All of these things are written down in specific detail for you as a potential job seeker, let's say, to see. So you have to keep in the back of your mind how transparent recruiting is nowadays and how important it is to really invest into your branding. And when I say branding, I don't just mean the shell that you show to the rest of the world. I actually mean your culture. So I cannot tell you how many people I have met or how many companies I have encountered along the way who told me, oh, we're so awesome. Yeah, we play ping pong in our break and we all love each other and we go hiking and we're so great and everything's funny. And you know, everybody says that. If that's actually the case or not is completely up to you. And I know this is something you've probably heard a lot of times before, but everything counts from the very beginning of the process, not just what you would like to show to the rest of the world, but how you enforce it. Websites like this and like LinkedIn Jobs and Monster.com and StepStone and all of those things are kind of representative of the trend that this area is going into nowadays. So when we're talking about employer branding, we're also talking about a little bit about the employer itself, obviously. So you need to come up with a couple of questions. You need to ask yourself honestly before you start with this process, not just how much money you have, how much budget you have to spend on a certain role, but you need to ask yourself, well, I'm sorry, there you go. You need to ask yourself, what is it that I can actually offer? So once you've created your list of priorities, you know, okay, absolutely essential for the growth of my company right now is a marketing person. Let's just say as an example. Once you know that the marketing person is the first person you need to recruit, you can think, okay, how much is this position actually worth? That's not something lots of startups and lots of events really talk about so much because, you know, oh, people just come on board for the product and it's not about the money. Yes, that's all true. But at the end of the day, you are asking people to work for you. So you need to understand what the industry standard is. You need to know what a marketing person who has 1 to 3 years experience and a college degree and 5 internships and whatnot can expect from you as an employer. And it's important, even if you cannot pay that amount. That's not the point. You need to understand what it is you are expecting somebody to do for you and what they can expect in return. So once you know what the standard is, then you look at your budget. You think, all right, let's say this position is worth, I don't know, 2,000 euros brutto if you have somebody under contract. You cannot pay that much. Let's say you can only pay 1,000 euros. Think about what you can offer to compensate for that. And this is not just bribing someone and convincing them to get on board, but really think about it. So in my case, we obviously, as all startups, you have no time and absolutely no money, but you still need to get someone on board. So once you convince them of your product and why it's awesome and why it's groundbreaking and it's going to change the rest of the world, you have to think about what you can offer them in return. So whether that's for example, a BVG ticket, a monthly ticket that you can write off your taxes, for example, or whether it's, okay, I'm going to offer you food in the office and I'm going to pay you your gym costs because I want you to be fit and healthy when you come to the office. I'm just being creative here. It's completely up to you. But have something that you know you are not only able, but very willing to offer. Once you've come up, once you've figured out the position you need the most, how much the role is worth, and what you can offer, you need to think about what you are expecting in terms of a skill set. So this has been covered before, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. The only thing I would like to focus on in terms of role requirements is don't be too specific. This is something I'm sure we can debate about. The more specific you are, the more narrowed down your candidates pool will be. It's a good thing, don't get me wrong. I'm going to talk about filters later, but it can also be a bad thing because in startup, chances are you're probably going to be juggling lots of hats, right? So the marketing person also does PR, and PR also kind of does sales a little bit. This person also does community management and goes to networking events and things like that and represents your brand. So be careful what you put in your job description, which I'll get to in a second. When you've understood what the role actually requires and the kind of skills that are needed for it, think about the culture. So I thought about it before. I sat down with my co-founder and I said, okay, well, what kind of people do we want to work with? This is awesome. I can choose, right? And I realized, okay, I definitely don't want to have homophobic people. I don't want to have people who would, I don't know, who don't like to socialize with their colleagues. I don't want to have people who are too solitary and maybe they're specialists and they do their own thing. But all of these things, I knew that in my company, in my culture, I need to have this, and this. So you have your two criteria, requirements for the role, requirements for the person. Then you need to think about how you work. So let's say you're the CEO of a company and you are the kind of person, details, nah, get out of my way with details. You just want things, you just want the broad picture. You're the strategy person, visionary, right? You're the person who decides where does the product go? You make the decision on who to work with, which partner to go with, etc. You don't want to think about logistics like, okay, in my first, let's say you're doing an event where people hang up their coats. How, will there be a beamer there with a cable for a Mac? All of these things are not in your mind when you are a founder. As an example, I'm not saying that's who you are. The people you hire, if you hire someone with the same qualities as you, that's great because you will be able to appreciate their strengths and their weaknesses and you'll probably be able to work well together. But chances are at some point, there's going to be some detail along the way that someone will miss. Why? Because you always need to have people who are A, better than you, and B, who complement you in your skills. As an example, actually there are two examples. My co-founder is, he's very different from me. He is completely the opposite in terms of skill set, and also in terms of mentality, in terms of social interaction. And yet, when we work together, we can pretty much be sure that the bases will be covered. We clash like crazy, but still, we kind of make a good team. And it's the same with your employees. Even if they're not on the same level as you, they're working with you on your product. So think about if you're looking for someone who's similar to you, or if you're looking for someone who's the opposite, or maybe somewhere in between. All of these questions you need to ask yourself beforehand. The next, once you've figured all of that out, the next step is basically, how do you create a process that works for your company? Now, there's a million different options in this. But if you look at this slide, let's ignore the right side first, and let's just only look at this side here. This is basically what happens when you, let's meet for coffee. I'm looking for, developer. Let's just see what you're willing to do. Okay, no, we can meet next week, blah, blah, blah. Oh, actually, no, wait, what? You need this and this much money? Wait, what? You can't work as a freelancer? Or, oh, okay, you need this and this. It's going to be so complicated. Save time, be efficient, and come up with the process. Don't just wing it. Trust me on this. You're going to waste a lot of your time with this, and it's going to be very, very frustrating. And also, it's going to give you a very bad reputation because the less organized you are, and trust me, people talk, always be aware of that. One email that you didn't reply when someone applied to your job application is going to damage your reputation. The same thing with the structure. You need to know exactly how you are going to formulate each question. You need to know what happens after the first step. You need to know what you're looking for, all of that stuff. The goal is that this is basically, a combination of these two pictures is basically what you should achieve. So you need some kind of a filter, right? In the big part of the filter, you have all of the applications that come in. This part in between, that's not you. You're not doing anything here. You have already a system in place that takes care of the work for you. So you need to come up with a process that makes your life easier. Does anybody know If This Then That? It's a website, no? You know this? So If This Then That is like this automation site. You'd say you can type in, for example, if I get an email to my Gmail account in this inbox, it automatically gets forwarded and saved in my Dropbox folder here. And when that happens, I get a text message that says, one new application, this is the CV, for example. That's just an example of what you can do. But basically, you need to have a filter that kind of does all the work for you. And what happens at the end, those are your applications. So I kind of sat down and I thought, oh my God, I have so much to do. I have to think about the product, I have to think about marketing, I have to think about money and taxes and all of this kind of stuff. And now I have to screen candidates. No, man, I have no time for this. I need someone else to do it. But we had no one else. So I came up with a system. I wrote a job description, really thought about the role, the company, and all that stuff. We covered all the bases. And then I thought about how can I kind of narrow down the candidates without overlooking some and without going through all these CVs. In the 3 years that I worked with my company, I'm not operational there anymore, but in those 3 years, I didn't open a single CV, nothing. I've never seen any CV. I got sent a lot of them along the way, but I always told them, if you're interested in this job, thank you very much for contacting me, but here's the link. Here are the 5 questions I would like you to answer, and then I will get back to you. So that was my form of a filter. That's maybe not applicable to your case. Maybe what you need is a coding puzzle, or maybe you need a case study question, or maybe you need some kind of a creative question if you're looking for a blogger or whatever it is. So that's specific to your company. But in my case, I thought about, I had my role description. Okay, I thought of some questions that would really help me compare candidates to each other before even contacting them back and saying, hey, let's have a Skype call. So how do you do that? That can be kind of tricky. You have to ask questions that are not so broad. Like, for example, a bad example of a question is, for a marketing position, this is our product, how would you market it? That's a very bad question. You can have any kind of answer, from a one-liner to a huge essay to a master thesis. That's not the kind of question you want to ask. You want to say, okay, as an example, let's say you have a magazine, it's a good example. You have 3,000 readers, you have a Facebook profile, a Twitter profile, you're circulated in these countries, and your print copy comes out once a month, and these are the topics, and these are your partners. How do you double the number of readers or the number of subscribers? Give me 3 examples how you would double this number. And then you have quantifiable answers that you can actually compare. You can actually see, oh, in this answer, I can see how the person analyzed the question, thought logically, maybe came up with a creative idea that was out of the box, and was able to concisely put it on paper. And I say concisely with so much emphasis because it's really important, and I think this is in general, it's very important for a candidate to be able, if you have these case study questions, to really focus on what he or she wants to convey. Yeah. Okay, it wasn't such a big deal, but I was kind of shocked when in my Google form, I had a job listing online and I had a Google form, I looked in the spreadsheet and I thought, whoa, I was scrolling down, I was like, I got a lot of applications. Actually, I just got 1. But you wrote so much text, he was not able to boil it down to 1 question. He just wasn't able to. I thought, okay, this is not a good thing. You need to know exactly what kind of skill set will be reflected also in your answers. So these questions are highly important. Highly important. Test them with your friends, go through them with your co-founder or whoever's opinion you trust, and really, really think about what you want to ask in order to be able to filter through the sea of candidates that will be hopefully coming your way. The important thing here is that you're not looking for the right answer, unless of course you are, if it's like a math problem. But kind of the thinking behind it, which comes back to the whole phrasing of the question itself. A little anecdote for you. I once had an applicant who went through all of my questions, and he basically said the same thing each time. He goes, "Interesting question. I would love to elaborate on this over coffee. How about next week?" Smiley. Second question. "Oh, I've never thought of it that way. Oh, I would love to discuss this with you. How about we meet next week?" Smiley. And he answered all of my questions like that. And I thought, okay, that's also, no answer is also an answer. Imagine if this person would have sent me a really awesome CV with all of the great, you know, like top school, top experience, all that stuff, all that jazz, but is too arrogant or doesn't take me seriously enough to actually answer the question in the case study. That's not the kind of person I wanted to have. I'm not saying that has to be the case with you, but this is another example of why it's really, really, really important. So once you've gone through what I like to call the questionnaire, which can also be a puzzle or some kind of another test in a way, you get to the interview. So in my case, when the people who I filtered through after they were filtered through by my questions, I invited them for a step call. So my our ex-business developer, I hired him mainly because of the first impression that he made. Obviously, he was also very, very skilled at the job, but he basically started off the Skype call. He's like, "Hi, Clarissa. Oh, thank you so much for talking to me. I really appreciate the time you took to speak to me. Actually, I have to confess, I kind of stalked you online." And I was like, okay. And he goes, "I stalked you online and I saw that you speak Chinese." He goes, "Yeah, so you went to Zhongguo, did you?" "Yeah, I have to 练习 my Hanyu, but you know, it's a work in progress." And straight out of the bat, he had the balls to, first of all, tell me that he stalked me online, which I loved. It was transparent, he was straight to the point, he was self-confident enough. And then second of all, he went straight to that one thing we had in common. And I thought, okay, this is a business developer, this is somebody that I want to make connections, sell my product, etc., etc. This is the kind of person I need. And after that, I focused only on the culture. How does he work? Do you prefer to work, I ask questions like, do you prefer to work alone or do you like to work in a team? What if we have to work overtime? Do you get annoyed or do you like actually powering through the nights? Do you need lots of vacation time? Do you, whatever it is, what was an example of a bad experience that you had in your previous job? Okay, if you were in the same situation today, how would you change it? All of these things are important to understand the way someone works. When he passed that level, I then handed over to my co-founder, who then asked him specific questions about the role itself. So then he really had to prove his knowledge, elaborate on the questions he filled out, why did you give this answer, etc., etc. Our project manager, for example, Vincent, and coming back to the hiring people who complement you in your skills, he was asked by my co-founder in an interview, he says, "So Vincent, in question number 2, you said this and this and this. Why did you say that? That doesn't make sense." And Vincent was like, "Well, actually, if you would have read your question properly, you would see that the comma actually suggests that blah, 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 blah." So I could see in that answer, wow, okay, this is a detail-oriented person. So these are all like examples of things you should do. To basically summarize is, have your good filter, whatever it is. Think about the most important questions before you start, and focus on the relevant things in your interview. When you're trying to screen for culture, really talk about his personality. When you're trying to screen for the role, talk about the role. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is how to put yourself in your candidate's shoes, because I think it's actually very, very, very important. A while ago, I got a job offer, and I was talking to a friend of mine about it who is super experienced in HR and administration, and I was like, "Yeah, they're not offering me a contract." And she was like, "So why do you want to work there?" And I thought, actually, that's a good question. Why do I want to work there? What is it about them that interests me? What is it about their company that attracts me, where I can grow? What is it about them that, or how did they approach me? How did they tell me that they actually want me? It's not just me begging for the job. The company also has to beg for me because I'm worth something, right? If I'm good, then the company has to answer why they think they can offer me the right job and fulfill my expectations. So if this talk were about the other side of the table, if all of you were job seekers, I would give you some very concrete pieces of advice. If somebody would tell me, I got a job offer, but the company can't pay me for whatever reason, it's normal in the beginning of a startup. Sometimes you just can't give someone a contract and you want someone to come as a freelancer, right? But if it were the other way around, and just one of you told me that, I would basically say, there's a really great song by Beyonce, it's, if you liked it, then you should have put a ring on it. That's exactly what it is. If you have to understand also that from the job candidate's perspective, if you cannot offer stability or you cannot commit in the form of a contract for whatever reason, whether it's budget or you don't know if the role is going to evolve or maybe you're going to change your headquarters to another country or whatever it is, you need to understand initial skepticism and you need to understand that it's your job to really argue and justify why you're not able to do it and to give the person a justification for why you still want them to come on board. Chances are maybe you'll find someone who's totally okay with being a freelancer. That's fine. But you need to know that if you were in a different position, how you would feel with the conditions that you are offering. And the reason I made such a big deal out of this is because I've noticed that increasingly in the startup scene, it's so easy to just hire someone, stell mir eine Rechnung, just give me an invoice, it'll be fine, it's not complicated. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to lie here, I also had people work for me on a freelancer basis. When I look back now though, I think how lucky I am that they even did that, and how great it is that I managed to find wonderful people. The reason I managed to find wonderful people though, is because of the questions I asked myself beforehand, and the things I could offer them in compensation of the money that I couldn't. So really think about what you are, the conditions that you're offering your job candidate when you're looking for people to join your team. So basically, what are the takeaways from my talk? Because I think I drifted off a little bit, some personal anecdotes. The recruitment scene is becoming more and more transparent. I see it with these websites, but I also see it in events like mine where thousands of people from all over the world come to Berlin to actually get an insight into company culture. So my company's business model monetized exactly this. Have that in mind. Everything counts from the very beginning, first email, to your job description, make sure it's proofread, make sure you know how you want to go about it, make sure you know what you can offer. Really ask yourself these questions, make sure that your system works for you, come up with good workflows, good automation processes and filters, and put yourself in their shoes. Yeah. Thank you.
Right, any questions right away? If not, we get pizza away. Oh, go ahead, please. We don't have pizza away, please go ahead.
Sorry for the interruption. How do you manage to hire people who are not like you? Like you are some outgoing, creative, talking person. I'm from the programmer side. And if you tell me you want to have coffee with me on the lunch break, that's terrible. As a programmer, I need at least 6 hours of undisturbed work. And if there's a lunch break in between, you ruined my day. And for me, that's easy to see. Yeah. For you, it's more difficult. I'm in the opposite side. Like, I would never ask a designer to go to coffee with me, because I think I'm winning his stage. By not asking him for coffee, I'm seeming unfriendly.
So first of all, you need to differentiate between how do you hire people who are not like you, which means that if I were to build a tech product, I would need someone who is really not like me, because I cannot build a tech product. I would ask you a couple of questions in terms of how do you like to work. So the thing with the lunch break and 6 hours and all that, I would have to think, okay, would that work for me? But most importantly is not the fact that you are, your personality is important to me, not because you have to be the opposite or because you have to be similar. There's nothing specific that I'm looking for in the whole package. I just need to know that these are my weaknesses. I need to ask myself, what are my weaknesses and how can you help me in that way? What is it about you that makes you better than me? So the founder has to kind of be self-reflective and ask himself, okay, what are my weaknesses? Like literally, what are my weaknesses? And are those strengths in the candidates that I have in front of me? And if you tell me I cannot have lunch within those 6 hours, then that tells me, concentration. That tells me discipline and hard work, and he can just get the job done, puts on his headphones, I tell him I need this, and he sits down and solves the problem. That's the kind of person I would need for maybe a tech product. You would not be the kind of person who, like you just said, would maybe be good for like a design, marketing kind of thing, but in that case I would look for a different candidate, right? So it's not so much about, it's obviously it's easy to recognize similarities in someone, but it's just as easy to train yourself to recognize the things that you don't have but that you want. So self-reflectiveness is the key. Any other questions? I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign. I'm going to say it's a good sign, yeah.
Well, did you make any big mistakes about hiring? There are many horror stories.
Yeah, I did make a mistake in the sense that I thought I wasn't realistic with myself. I thought I could promise somebody something that I actually couldn't deliver on. So to be vague, because I don't want to go into detail here, I thought I misjudged the direction and the success of my company, in the sense that I thought we would be at a much different stage in 6 months than we actually were. And I hinged a lot of my promises on where we're going to be in 6 months. Be very careful with that, by the way, because that's a really tricky thing. Obviously, you can never know what happens. You can't predict the future, especially if you're a startup and you have to constantly iterate and there's constantly a lot of problems. But the biggest mistake that I did was promise something I couldn't deliver on. And in the end, because I'm the kind of person that I hate not delivering on something, it cost me a lot of money, a lot of stress, and some bad tensions with the person that luckily is still a good friend. But let's say this person hadn't been a good friend, she could have very, very easily said, yeah, she treated me really badly. And it would have been justified because I made a mistake. So that could have been avoided if I had asked myself those questions in the beginning, like all of them. I learned along the way, obviously, but that was, I think, the biggest mistake that I made. Anything else? You guys are hungry, right? I think we should go have some pizza. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody will be around, so there's more beer, there's pizza. You can come and chat with the speakers, obviously, and we'll ask if you have any questions, and then just enjoy. We have more than enough, I think, because we calculated with 50 people, some didn't show up, so you can eat as much and drink as much as you can. Yeah.